Might as well start with a poll. Who has never been to a Neurotech event before? Okay, and then keep your hands up if you're a fresher. Okay, pretty good turnout. I was going to say Freshers Week is, from my memory, unbelievably hectic. So thank you for making it here. I imagine it has been very busy for you all. All right, I'm on the presentation. Cool. So Neurotech 101 is, I'll clear Jared's face away. Also, my name is Anish. I'm one of the presidents of Neurotech. Jared, the lovely man in the corner, is another president. He is away in Cambridge right now, so will not be here. But he looks like he's on a train, so might be bursting in with 5 minutes to go. We'll see. Let me get my... So we can say hi to Jared, and then we're going to shrink him, unfortunately. Okay, so what is Neurotech? Let's go. Perfect. So I've called this a workshop. Small I. I want it to be as interactive as possible. So if anyone has any questions at all, please stick your hand up at any point. I will make a point of answering it. We're going to try and stick to the hour because we don't want to keep people from their bedtimes, etc. But yes, if you have any questions, please ask. I will do my best to answer them straight away. And I know there will be some language barriers. I mean, we're at Freshers Fair and I'm trying to explain to people what the word brain means. And, you know, it's a tough one to really understand technical terms, forget about in a foreign language. So if you have questions, write them down and we'll do them at the end. All the committee or majority of the committee are here, so we'll be able to answer questions at the end. In terms of what the workshop is about, it's mainly just what is Neurotech, what do we do as a society at Imperial, and how can you get involved while here. It's going to sound a little bit cliche, but like this genuinely could be the beginning of a career for you. I remember at the beginning of last year when there was no Neurotech Society, I had no idea what I was going to do when I graduated. And then literally 6 months later, when I'm involved in society, I'm realizing this is exactly what I want to do when I graduate. So maybe this is the beginning of something for you. So we'll begin with a very simple, but also very complex definition of what Neurotech is. It's a very broad field. Realistically, it's just anything that understands, interacts with, or modifies the brain. There's quite a few different subdomains there. Some of it is engineering, some of it is computational, some of it is literally just theoretical. There are broadly a couple key terms within Neurotech, though. The first is a brain-computer interface. I'll do another poll quickly then. Who has never heard of what a brain-computer interface is? Okay, a couple. It is exactly what it says on the tin. Unsurprisingly, it's a very apt definition. I'll go into exactly what it is, but they come in two main categories, invasive and non-invasive. There is a picture on the board. Luckily, the screens are very big, so everyone can see them. There's 3 different types of brain-computer interfaces here: EEGs, ECOGs, and intracortical microelectrodes. I guess, does anyone want to stick their hand up and try and guess which ones you would term, so it's subjective to some extent, which ones you would term as invasive and which ones you would term as non-invasive? Anyone at all? Yes. Could you just yell a little bit louder? Sorry. I couldn't hear, sorry. Perfect. So I think we can agree the intracortical microelectrode is ECOG, since it's within the skull, invasive. Yep, perfect. And the EEG is on top of the skull, not. Perfect. Yeah, I mean, most people would agree with that exact definition. That's the case. There is one small controversial matter, but we'll get into that when we get into the different types of BCIs. A somewhat subdomain of BCIs actually is neuroprosthetics. So neuroprosthetics are really, hopefully people know what prosthetics are, the sort of things that attach to limbs in your body to try and augment them in some way or supplement behavior that's been missing or replace it even. You can do that using neural data. So if you're missing your arm and you had electrodes that recorded the data that was going on through the nervous fibers at the end of your arm where it's been severed, for example, and you control a prosthetic with that, that is a neuroprosthetic. It doesn't have to do with the brain, I should say. The nervous system is throughout your entire body. Neuromodulation, I found some very off-putting images, but they are 4 different BCIs, and hopefully by the end of this, everyone will be able to point out what each of them are. I'll go through them very quickly just so people know. I haven't actually got a laser pointer, which is oh, I do. Okay. So the one on top right here is something called a deep brain stimulation device, so a deep brain stimulator. This one here is a vagus nerve stimulator, so these are both invasive and go inside the body. This one here is called a transcranial magnetic stimulation device. I'll go into what these are. These are very just, they'll sound like they're yelling key terms in your face, but trust me, I'll help you understand them. And this one uses ultrasound. So this is generally sort of an ultrasound device. We'll talk about something called focused ultrasound, which is specifically on the brain. But this one here is stimulating the vagus nerve as this one is, but doing it non-invasively, so outside the body. So, wait, did I miss a slide? Oh yeah, and then neural data analysis. I'm a computer scientist, I should say. I've not touched a lick of engineering in my degree. despite it being an MEng somehow. So this is sort of a computational side that really is the understanding part of neurotech. So just to show that neurotech doesn't actually need to be physical hardware. So there are a bunch of subdomains in neurotech. It is not a degree at Imperial, apart from for master's levels. So it's worth understanding what people do at Imperial or just generally that relates to neurotech. I've got a bunch here, and I'll quickly just run through them because I've already waffled for about 15 minutes without doing anything. So neuroscience, electrical engineering, biomedical engineering, computer science, philosophy, psychology. Some of like the bottom two, for example, non-traditional. You might not think of them as related to neurotech, but they are. For those who've made it here, there is an event going on in the crypt right now. It's actually related to law. So I thank you for making it here. If you didn't know about it, don't worry about it. But thank you because neurotech can be anything. You could be talking about neuroethics, which is a philosophy matter, but it's still related to this world. And then these are, when I went through the Imperial degrees, the list of Imperial degrees that are related, there is a bunch on here. I have two questions. One, does anyone know a degree that Imperial that begins with after the letter P? Because I could not find one. Does anyone do a degree after the letter P? Someone yell something. Perfect. No more. No, petroleum engineering. Does anyone not do one of the degrees on the board? What do you do? Economics. Okay, well, that is actually somewhat related because there's a lot of commercialization of BCI devices and things that will be related to how markets work. So I can put it on there for the next presentation. I'll make the slides available as well. I'll put them on, I don't know if anyone knows what GitHub is, but I'll put it on a GitHub so we can make sure that everyone accesses them afterwards. All right, straight into what a brain-computer interface is. So the definition, very self-explanatory, really. It is something that interfaces between a brain and a computer. But a more expanded definition is that it talks to external devices as opposed to just a computer. It doesn't necessarily need to be a laptop, for example. You can subdivide BCIs however you want, but the two most common ones that I would use are neuroimaging and brain stimulation. So that's largely reading. So neuroimaging, sorry, I keep switching which side I'm pointing to. I'm sorry about that. Neuroimaging devices would read the brain, and your brain stimulation devices would write to the brain. It would modify it in some way. But there are also other categorizations, such as the one we talked about before, invasive and non-invasive. So I'm going to go through each of these sort of four categories by subcategorizing into each of the two, go into what devices currently exist. I should say, as a quick disclaimer first, there are a lot of technical details here. If you've never heard of neurotech and not heard of BCIs before, there'll be a lot of words where you're like, what is going on? I don't understand. I promise it is just supposed to help you. I think it's very valuable to become, I don't know, more comfortable speaking about these devices. So when someone says, for example, TMS, you're not out of the conversation straight away. You know roughly what they're talking about. So it's helpful if you pay attention, but I can promise you, if you just zone out for 15 minutes and come back to us, you will be completely fine. There's no need to pay attention strictly. So neuroimaging invasive devices. Firstly, intracortical microelectrodes. Actually, I do have pictures. They're not pretty, but you can't really get away from them. So an intracortical microelectrode are the electrodes that get embedded inside the cortex. So the cortex is effectively the surface level of the brain. It's the latest stage of evolution. So it's something that really humans have developed more than any other animal. And is where a lot of the brain communication happens. A lot of the brain's processing power is inside the cortex. So reading just from the surface of it can be very powerful. This one here, I mean, there's no hiding the name of the company that developed it, but this is the Neuralink chip. When I was promoting this event to people, every single person I talked to said, oh, is that Neurotech? Is that Neuralink then? Yes, it is. Neuralink are a huge part of what this field currently is and what it will be in the future, but they are not all of it, I should say. But yes, they developed this device here, which has these electrode wires at the end that get embedded. They have a little, like a sewing loop that goes on the end of them, and a robot will put that into your cortex. So that's how that reads it. And then this is just a picture of a generic intracortical microelectrode device. So the Utah array is something that's been used for many years. Was that a question or nope? That's been many years. It's effectively like a massive shank. It's literally like a bunch of spikes that go embedded straight on the top of the cortex. It's kind of gruesome to look at. And I would say Neuralink have done a good job of making it seem nicer because their electrodes, as you can see, are flexible. They don't just get stuck in you, really. It's actually quite a neat operation. So the second type, which was on the board earlier, is something called an ECOG, which is electrocorticography. So an ECOG is something where it's an operation where they remove part of the skull and they place this electrode cap directly on the surface of your brain. So that makes your reading modality and your writing, if you choose to, but obviously we're talking about reading devices, much more accurate. You can read from specific areas of the brain, like the motor cortex, for example, if you wanted to decode what motor actions they wanted to do very accurately, and you can get very good temporal resolution, which is something I'll talk about later in terms of what that means, but you can read very quickly. Yes. It depends. It depends. It's generally because the ECOG will be exfiltrating data via a wire. Generally not, because it's generally during operation they'll keep this on. This is, for example, if someone is installing a DBS, a deep brain stimulator, they'll place this on the skull just to see that they are retaining those functions that they need to, and that the brain is functioning. Actually, DBS is generally done while the patient's awake, so you can just talk to them. But that's an example use case. I believe you can. But one of the biggest problems with invasive devices, and we'll talk about this when we talk about brain stimulation devices, is getting the data out. So when you want to communicate all this brain data you're reading, you need to do it by radio, for example, or Neuralink do it via Bluetooth. And that can be very tricky. And so you need a large device with a battery for that. So if you wanted to place the skull back on top of your ECOG array, you would have to create a battery and a communication protocol that is probably more complex than you want it to be if you could just leave it exposed, which obviously seems gruesome, but it's surgically okay. So some of the advantages and disadvantages of invasive neuroimaging devices seem pretty obvious in that you can read it very clearly and you can read it from where exactly you want to read it. But the disadvantage is it's invasive, it seems gruesome, people aren't going to say yes to it, and there is a lot of risks to doing a surgery, unsurprisingly. Okay, so the non-invasive examples. So there's quite a few. This is probably where the biggest market for neurotech is. So this is where all the devices you'll be seeing coming out nowadays will probably be in these categories. So we've got electroencephalography, which is EEG, probably one of the most common forms of neurotech out there. So that will measure electrical activity from the scalp using electrodes. So when a large number of your neurons, so hopefully everyone knows what a neuron is, but when that fires in synchronicity, when a lot fire at the same time, that will propagate through the brain and to the scalp. And you can read that using an ECOG, using an EEG, sorry. So I think the example that's most commonly used when people try to describe exactly what sort of fidelity you're getting with this is it's like trying to estimate what players on a football pitch are saying to each other from the noise outside the stadium. So you're listening to the chant of the fans. You have no idea realistically what each player is saying to each other because it's not propagating outwards. But that's an example as to the level of detail you're actually getting. You're very far removed, and it's only when a large number of people make a noise in unison, i.e., someone scores a goal, for example, that you would hear it. So that's why it's kind of powerful in that it's very accessible, but really can't do much in terms of understanding. It will never be able to read your thoughts, for example, if people are scared of that. Okay. I guarantee it's not possible. And then I got some pictures. So this is a traditional EEG that they would use in like a lab or something. And then this is a more commercial device, like a headband that would be used to do that. MEG. So magnetoencephalography. I haven't got a picture because it looks kind of gruesome. It's like a massive Magneto from X-Men. I'm going to say, is it Dr. X, Professor X, I think, or whoever his partner is, has a big headset. It's a bit like that. It's just a massive headset that goes out. And it actually reads the exact same things as EEGs because the electrical signals produced by the neurons also produce magnetic fields, and that's what MEG picks up on. That's generally used pre-surgery just to map your brain function. And then FNIRS, so we had an event at the end of last year by a founder called Aki, who is founding a company that will do FNIRS, and that is using something called optogenetics to read the blood oxygenation. So that is reading an indirect measurement of brain activity. You're not reading the electrical signals that the neurons are producing, you're reading the blood oxygenation that happens when neurons are active. Okay, so when a lot of activity is happening in a certain part of the brain, blood will go there. FNIRS is able to shoot a laser into the top layer of the brain and see is neural activity happening there. So it's also quite a low fidelity measurement, if that makes sense. And there are more. So fMRI is functional magnetic resonance imaging. People will know hopefully what MRI is. It's a big like a table that you sit on and you go into a machine and it makes a lot of loud noises. It's generally used for taking really, really high resolution images of the brain. It's very powerful at doing soft tissue imaging in vivo. You can use it to also measure blood oxygenation level. And when you do it over time, it's called functional MRI. So you are reading over multiple different pictures, how has their brain changed? And that's generally what's used when people use brain imaging for surgery is to see basically very high spatial resolution of what is happening where. This is an image of a PET scan. A PET scan, actually, an MRI looks very similar to this. A PET scan is the somewhat controversial example I used earlier. So a PET scan involves ingesting a radioactive tracer, and then you can watch that tracer move through someone's body, and you can track metabolism through that. Whether it is invasive or not is actually up to debate. A lot of people will list it as an invasive method because you have to swallow something. If something goes into your body, technically it is invasive. But because there's no surgery, it is literally just swallowing one thing. I put it on non-invasive, but that's up to you. But however you want to do that. And that's used for cancer detection. And then the advantages and disadvantages, pretty much just the polar opposite of the invasive examples, in that it's pretty easy to use. You can literally give someone an EEG headset right now and then put it on and you can measure their brain signals. There's no need to do a background check, for example, which you need for an invasive one. But the disadvantage as I mentioned earlier, is that really you're not getting much data. I mean, you are getting a lot of data and you can use it for stuff, but realistically, it's very limited if you want to do advanced brain science because you are reading distorted signal data. Moving over to the brain stimulation. So the invasive brain stimulation. So this is a deep brain stimulator. It's what the picture of the gruesome picture I showed you earlier was of. This is a very common surgery. About 150,000 people in the world, I think, have it. And it is generally used for Parkinson's treatment. So you embed an electrode very deep inside the brain, and that can send electrical signals out to certain areas. It's very high spatial resolution because it's inside the brain, to, let's say, quiet it down. So a Parkinson's patient, if people don't know, generally have tremors. So their motor cortex will just constantly be in action, and they'll be moving even when they want to sit still. If you implant a DBS inside of it, it can send a signal to that part of the brain and hopefully stop the tremors. Cortical microstimulation is very similar to the Neuralink thing I showed you earlier. Weirdly, in all of Neuralink's literature, they say that they have stimulators attached to their electrodes so that they can stimulate as well. There is no mention in any of the literature about what they do with that. Everything they talk about is how they can read data, but seemingly they are able to write it as well. But yeah, there are plenty of microstimulators out there that can directly stimulate the cortex. And a very common example that you would use this for example, is to restore perceptions of things. So if you stimulate the somasensory cortex, you could, for example, make someone feel something without touching their arm. That is one example. And there are plenty of use cases of this sort of technology that will happen in the future. But that's just one example in that sensations can be triggered inside the body just by stimulating a part of the brain. And then I showed earlier the vagus nerve stimulation. Vagus nerve stimulation can be invasive and non-invasive. We had a talk at the end of last year called Jane, who's doing non-invasive vagus nerve stimulation. So it's effectively a device that sits over the vagus nerve, which is roughly around here, and will send electrical signals. But you can just as easily do that invasively. And the vagus nerve sends data out to a majority of the circuits in the peripheral nervous system. So you can, for example, treat epilepsy, migraine prevention. You can make people feel relaxed. That's a large use case of vagus nerve stimulation. It's one of the most commonly and widely used versions of invasive brain stimulation devices because these ones here require surgery, as you can expect. So they're quite serious. So non-invasive brain stimulation. So the most common, the one that I talked about that Jane uses, is something called transcranial electric stimulation. That's used for a bunch of different use cases here. I've got papers. This will be on the GitHub so people can actually click these links. Sorry if it's a bit small right now, but you can use you can stimulate the brain from outside the skull very easily by sending electrical currents through it. There's a couple different ways of doing this. Well, actually, there's many different ways of doing this. There's three I've got here. There's direct current stimulation, there's alternating current stimulation, and there's pulsed current stimulation. There is a bunch. You can use random noise stimulation and others. The example picture I've got here is direct current. So the current will go in the cathode and outside the anode. So this is above the left supraorbital region, and I'm not sure what region that is. And basically current will flow through the brain and out this one. Alternating current, there is no anode and cathode because it keeps switching sides, but this one current goes in one direction. That's why it's an easy picture to see. And then this one is high definition transcranial direct stimulation because you have multiple different cathodes around it. Sorry, it goes from the anode to the cathode. I don't know why I said that. Sorry. And then and this one is high definition because you're doing it in a very specific part of the brain. It's not flowing all the way through. It's literally from here and then out the various cathodes that you have. That was 2 repetitions of a slide for some reason. Oh, I actually had an interesting story. So, Scribonius Largus, the physician to the Roman Emperor Claudius, described the therapeutic value of placing a stingray type fish called a torpedo that delivers electric shocks on the forehead. So, when the Emperor Claudius used to have headaches, they would put an electric eel on his head. So, they've done transcranial direct current stimulation for many, many years. It is not a new technology at all. Perfect. Let's continue. So this is another one of the fancy pictures I showed you earlier. This is a transcranial magnetic stimulator. So you have a coil in the device outside. You send electric current through it. Through electromagnetic induction, it generates a magnetic field that induces an electric current inside the brain. So without using electric current directly on the brain, you can cause an electric current in the brain. And that is currently used for OCD treatment and smoking addiction treatment, and obviously potentially other things in the future. And then one of the more interesting and potentially not controversial, but it's very different from the other things I mentioned so far, is focused ultrasound. So this is actually a surgical technology, and it's used if you send multiple different ultrasound transducers on the brain, focus them on a specific region, you can create a lesion in the brain. You can start destroying matter because you will send mechanical energy through the brain, i.e. the sound, through the brain, and that will reach a certain part and start heating it up and then start destroying the tissue. One good use case of it sounds terrible to destroy brain tissue, but a good use case is, as we mentioned earlier, the Parkinsonian tremor. So when someone's motor cortex is playing up, you might want to cause a lesion to that area and destroy it so that it can't keep playing up. And then another reason is the opening the blood-brain barrier. So if you have something inside the body that can't get into the central nervous system, you can inject bubbles into their bloodstream. When they get to the right point, focus the ultrasound transducer on them, they can vibrate, open the blood-brain barrier, and your chemicals, whatever it is, can get into the bloodstream where they need to be in the central nervous system. Okay, that was all the technical details. That was a lot of information about a lot of different technologies. I imagine some person in the room will operate with every single one of them at some point. So it's hopefully useful to people to have heard about them. We'll take it back to a little bit more of a different vibe now. We'll go into sort of sci-fi and just generally what's going to happen to the field in the future. There are some general goals that were decided. This is from the Brain Neural Computer Interaction Horizons 2020 project, which is an initiative by the European Commission for Coordinating BCI Research. They came up with these 6 goals, just general goals that BCIs, that neurotechnology will have in the future. I mean, you can read them yourselves, but we have restoring experiences, replacing experiences, enhancing, improving, supplementing, and use as a research tool. Generally, all technologies, BCI technologies, neurotechnologies can be put into one of these 6 categories, if not more. These are just general terms for how, if you wanted to build a BCI device yourself, you would target one of these, for example. Okay, all right, and then some longer term goals, and I have even longer term goals afterwards. But this is what's going to start happening in the next couple of years. So disease diagnosis, I won't go through all of them, but disease diagnosis, for example, those who were part of society last year might remember a man called Emil Hewage came to talk. He runs a company called BIOS. BIOS are doing disease diagnosis by looking at nervous system data in the peripheral nervous system. So you can, for example, diagnose if someone has Alzheimer's. Well, if someone has, maybe Alzheimer's is a bad example because it might not show in the peripheral nervous system. Some other neuroscience disease, insert it here, using the peripheral nervous system. And then all of these things are things that are happening right now. For example, speech restoration is already a common thing in many different labs. You can decode speech by looking at someone's EEG, for example, which might be what you're referring to. I'm not sure. Well, lovely. We're on that shit straight away. Restoring vision is actually what Neuralink's second thing is about. So their first thing was called telepathy, which is allowing someone to move a cursor with just their mind. Their second project is called blind sight, which is going to enable people to see if their optic nerves have been damaged, for example, by augmenting stuff that is currently missing. Psychiatric diseases, emotion detection, modulation. Asher, you might know some stuff about emotion detection. It's a thing that's probably going to be more common in the workplace in the future, potentially. BCI-driven artificial intelligence. I know, Jared, that was a big motivation for you joining the field, for example. There are lots of different things that will happen in the future. This is just a very small subset that I came up with earlier. And then if we're looking even longer, Some of you who are in the group chat might have seen that Michael is our ex-treasurer, put a big long list of potential things that could happen in the future. This is some of them. There is a big long list of things that are very sci-fi and could happen in the future. And this is them, for example. So accelerated learning is, if you've seen The Matrix, you can plug yourself into a machine and learn a new skill. It could be possible. Neural lifespan, obviously your brain does die at some point. You could extend that. You could potentially share your consciousness, your way of thinking. You could upload it somewhere, potentially. I'm not saying this is going to happen at any point in the future, but it could. Subjective time perception, so how long you think something's lasting. If you're in a lecture that's boring, and you could potentially make it seem like it's passed in 5 minutes. And then personality modification. If that motivates you, go for it. Okay, that was most of the neuro. Yes, go on. Okay, so we had a talker called Andreas Schaefer come in last year, and we did a podcast with him. And that was my big, like he explicitly said, oh yeah, I think the brain produces consciousness. I think that it's all in there. I asked it in a more, I'm very hesitant to say yes. I don't completely agree with it. But I know neuroscientists who will say 100% yes, that is where everything happens. Just look at the neural activity. I'm not going to make the jump and say that everything is happening in the brain, but it's very, very possible. We will find out in the future, potentially, hopefully. Yeah, go on. Hacking the mind. Without their permission, or without permission? No, I don't think it's the same with doing. I mean, I would actually struggle to come up with an example of where you would modulate someone's behavior without without their permission, with it being ethical. I don't think that's ethical. Do I think it's possible? Yes, yeah. Not right now, but it will be in the future. Yeah, like for example, the vagus nerve stimulating devices do calm a person down. Whether it's ethical to strap an angry person to a chair and stimulate their vagus nerve, I can't say, but something that could happen.
Be ethical. And I guess that like these are the same questions they feel like psychiatry where like you are forced onto meds sometimes. And I think it's going to be a very similar thing if it's like using as well.
We will go to the union afterwards, guys, and we can discuss all these things. I'll get into what ICL Neurotech is quickly. So Imperial Neurotech, we were founded last year. We actually founded this actual year. We were founded in January this year. We are the first neurotech society in England. Oxford was founded 2 weeks after us because they saw that we were ahead of the curve and wanted to copy. I want to stress we are very, very open to anyone in the society. For example, in our first year, we had first year undergrads, final year physicists, and MRes neurotech students all in the committee. We are open for anyone to join. You don't need to do anything neuroscience or engineering related at all. And yeah, I mean, that's what that slide says, to be fair. Cool. All right. So who are we? So there is me, Jared, Jiwoo, and Kelly. We are presidents, secretary, and treasurer. We have Elif, Jayla, Darius, and Danvant, events officer, outreach officer, conference officer, and publicity officer. Sorry, I should probably go into what each of these people do just briefly. So presidents, we're just responsible for running the society, make sure things go smoothly, etc. Doing this talk, I suppose. Jiwoo is in charge of making all notes from the meeting. Any communication that happens through a mailing list when we set up will be organized by Jiwoo. Kelly's in charge of all our money. Currently we have none, so it's quite easy. Elif does all the events. So there's an event next week, which I'll mention at the end, organized all by Elif. Jayla and Darius, effectively outreach officer and conference officer, make sure we have connections with people to come to the society, come speak to us. We have a conference/symposium, which I'll talk about in a little bit. All Darius. Danvant does all the lovely publicity. So if you saw our lovely flyers, thank Danvant for that. If you saw our flyers for this event as well, thank Danvant for that. Our Instagram as well, LinkedIn, there's a lot of different social medias we're on. Then we have Aishwara and Demir, who are the project coordinators. I'll talk about what projects we have. Well, they'll talk about what projects we have in a little bit, actually. But that is a big way for you to get involved in Neurotech. We'll talk about what's happening there in a bit. Ash is our podcast officer, so that we have a podcast. I mentioned Andreas Schaefer a little bit. We have an episode with him that will be coming out shortly. Even though he came in March, we haven't got the episode out, but we will. And Apollo and our podcast editors slash just general editors. So they will be, and actually Apollo is doing the Journal Club as well. So we'll talk about what Journal Club is in a little bit as well. Okay, right. So what do we do? Why should you come to our event slash be a member? We actually have 150 members on the union somehow. So hopefully that grows. If people in the room aren't a member, please join us. It's completely free. I'll put a QR code up at the end. So generally the main thing we do is talks. We try and have a meeting every single week. That's going to be people in academia, in business, or one of us. Anyone can talk, we should say. We're very much a student-run society. To people. So these are some of the speakers we had last year. So Emil is a CEO of BIOS Health, which is a very, very, very important neurotech company. And they actually just got funding from ARIA. So they're funded by the government to some extent to do neurotech work. Andreas Schaefer is part of the Francis Crick Institute. Shlomi Ha is part of Imperial. And Jane is a CEO of Mindspire. Jane actually might be coming back with a device. So hopefully that's interesting to people. But yeah, we have a large variety of talkers, academia, industry, whatever you want. And please, I would encourage you, if you have someone you want to come speak to the society, if you saw something on LinkedIn of a cool researcher, let us know and we'll try and get them in. Next, workshops. So I know this is not so much of an interactive workshop. I would love it to be more, but because it is sort of a 101, it really needs to be I'll give you the information, ask me questions if you have any. But generally, we do want to run workshops. We want people to have a data set, for example, in front of them or a Python notebook and just work through it. And so that's generally what we're going to try and put on throughout the year. We're going to have a computational neuroscience one that the project coordinators talk about a little bit. This is the introduction to neurotech. There are 2 more workshops in the series, luckily enough for you guys. And then we had a compression challenge workshop over the summer, which was actually just a single workshop because there wasn't that much interest. But there is opportunities for more workshops if you guys wanted to put one on. Then an event announcement. So Jared will know about this, but I don't know if actually anyone else does. But we have 2 hackathons coming up next year. So the aim is to run the first one in mid-January. It's actually landing on the same day as my uncle's 60th, so we're going to have to see which one I pick to go to. The first one is going to be open to everyone. There is no experience required for this hackathon. Anyone can sign up, take part. We're going to host it in Entrepreneurs First offices in Hoxton. So it's slightly East London, obviously. Oh, it's actually central, but for us it's East because we're West London boys and girls. But I'll get into exactly what that is later. But yeah, basically we're going to have 4 different streams, 3 practical ones, 1 ideation focused. Yes, go on. Yes, yeah. I'm going to put it on a GitHub and I'll share that with everyone so everything's accessible. And you can do that hybrid. So we're going to make sure that people can do it. Everyone can do it. And hopefully, if you've never done any neurotech projects before and you don't engage with what Demir and Ashra will tell you about later, you can still come to this and learn something. And then Neurotech X is a charity organization that just promotes neurotech around the world. We're doing it in collaboration with them. And then Entrepreneurs First is a very, very prolific startup company. So it's actually a massive honor for them to be involved. And hopefully they come speak to society at some point throughout the year. Then the symposium. So Darius is not here, but he helped organize this, and JLo, wherever JLo is. We have an event in collaboration with UCL. So that's going to be happening next month on their campus. We think we'll see where it actually gets hosted because they're having some difficulties with security kicking people out. But we're going to have a symposium with speakers from Imperial and UCL. And as you can see, a careers panel, a poster competition, and some refreshments if that was your main motivation for turning up. And there'll be it's going to be a very diverse event, not just one particular field. So whatever you're interested in, hopefully we will cater to it. Next, a podcast. So we have a podcast where we will interview people. So generally the people who come to talk, we'll ask them, do you want to be on the podcast as well? We've got a couple episodes in the going. Asha, our lovely podcast officer, will be in charge of getting them out and then promoting to you when they're done. But currently, so far, we have interviewed Tim Constantinou, who is this man over here, who is the founder of Mint Neurotech, which is an Imperial-based company. It's one of our proudest spin-outs, I'd say. Andreas Schaefer and Pedro Mediano, all Francis Crick Institute and an Imperial lecturer, all have been on the podcast, and their episodes will be out on Spotify, YouTube, whatever podcast series you want. We will get it out there for you. Next, socials. So we will have an event after this, so you can probably see what that's all about, but it's completely open to anyone. Come to 568/Union Bar, depending on what we book out for the day, and we will chat about neurotech or life or whatever you're interested in. Elif has put on some plans for some lovely events in the future. So we're going to have a movie night at some point where we will just sit and watch some Neurotech related movies. Hopefully you haven't watched them all, but yeah, Big Hero 6, Minority Report, and The Matrix are examples from our committee introduction posts that all of us have watched and are interested in. So if you've never seen them, please come along. Should be an interesting watch. Then we will have a conference trip at some point. Actually, I saw about an interesting British neuroscience conference that's coming up at the beginning of next year. Hopefully we can get a group together to go to that. But yeah, if you have any ideas for a conference that we could go to, let us know and we can all get on a bus. Like we can probably book something out. There was plans to last year, but again, we have no money. So how are we going to get a bus? And then lovely, we have some picnics, pubs and more. So hopefully there's something for you there. All right, now quickly talk about the project stream. Do you guys want to come on up?
Right. Okay, I'm Demir, and alongside Ashwara, a very experienced, we're coordinating all the projects this year. And just before I start, I just want to show of hands. Who feels new to Neurotech? Come on, everyone, probably. That's expected? You know, hopefully by the end of this year, we can try and lower those hands. So yeah. And we've cooked up 2 project streams for this year. And one of them is what we call it an onboarding project / workshop, and then also an advanced project for someone who's more technical. Okay. So the first one, the onboarding project / workshop. So a bit of context this, Apollo and I, in the summer, we did a computational neuroscience course run by Neurotech Academy. And it was really holistic, really intense. And we thought, you know what, this could be a good experience to recreate for everyone. And yeah,
Can everyone in the back hear? Right?
yeah, cool. Anyway,
Just FYI, but the team's called over there, so they won't be able to potentially hear you.
all right. Oh, I see. Okay,
Just
cool.
FYI.
Oh, cool. So we thought it was a really good experience to actually recreate and give back to the students because it's really holistic and it covers the maths, the science, and all the related multidisciplines that come with it. And we are looking to begin this in October, and we're focusing on making it fun and engaging. So, and then there's and then also there's the advanced projects. So this is for someone who's more ambitious and is more technical and intricate and can manage this. We're looking to also link this to competitions because, well, there's money involved. So yeah, that's more of an incentive for everyone. And we as we know, we need money. And then there's the, what else? Yes, I'll just give you a moment to scan the QR code and get involved in this if you want to. It'll also be later on and part of the WhatsApp and promotional material that we'll send out later. And to just explain what we've done so far, to show you guys that we're legit. So last year, there was an internal Imperial Hackstarter event. It was competition amongst other students in Imperial. And we decided, and team and I, Jayla, Elif, and August, who's somewhere floating in the air in America, probably, we decided to create this focused logging tool, which measures your focused and unfocused states to help guide people's learning and just to be more informative, because we thought, you know, logging should be the first step towards behavioral change. Better understand yourself, so better make changes. And this is what really excites me, and I think it should excite everyone, because this is where we have a chance to really disrupt and find solutions towards neurological impairments, whether it be anxiety, ADHD and associated anxiety and difficulties in time management, or depression and its associated neuroticism. And I think alongside improving impairments, but also making cool shit, right? Who doesn't like, you know, mind control and devices and stuff like that? So if you're really interested, please do sign up to all the advanced projects as well. And if you're new, there's an onboarding project for you guys too. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ashwarya. She's talking about the structure.
Cool. Thank you so much for being here, guys. I think as a committee, as well as project coordinators, it's wonderful to see so many of you in this session. So I just want to go over what the structure of the projects would be, because obviously we have so much interest, so many ideas from you guys as well. And we want to be dividing it into 3 specific categories: research, technique, and creation. And why is this important? Because a lot of us here are amateurs in neurotech. Like, you must be interested, but we don't know how to get it from an idea to execution, right? So that starts with research. And don't worry, I'm not going to throw journal papers at you. Research is going to be fun. It's going to be movies that you can watch to get inspired. It's going to be books, documentaries, any of that stuff. Basically, get the ball rolling to help you guys understand the area. All of that is going to go under research. So it will help you discover the world of neuroscience, explore, analyze what's piquing your interest, so on and so forth. Secondly, technique. So what is involved when you want to get a project from an idea to execution? Is it coding? Is it electronics? Of course, we'll change case by case based on the project you're working on, and we will be providing you with resources to get that to happen. And finally, when you're first inspired and then you're skilled at what you need, then we bring it to creation where you actually put your skills to use to create a wonderful project at the end. And this is the ambition we have, and we hope that it works in the course of the projects we will be introducing. So as Demir mentioned with the workshop, so I think the idea that we have is because a lot of you and maybe a bit of the committee as well, we're not very well versed with all the things that even Anish spoke about, all the terminologies and all of that. So we want all of you to understand and learn, I guess, the field of neuroscience together with each other. And we want to do this in a group-based project basis. And we want the groups to be holistic. So of course, you will have people that you are here with. I don't know how many of you have brought friends with you, but also we want you to be introduced to some other members who are skilled in maybe various other things that you might not know so much. So we're going to be focusing on leadership, on coding, and creativity. And do you want to talk about the Neuromatch
Yes.
information?
So the Neuromatch Academy was well, when we did it, it was pretty intense. So we had pods and we were very balanced. So there was always a good programmer in the team. There was always a good mathematician. And we're looking to, I think that will help the learning experience. So we're trying to cleverly design the groups. So it's not just a leaning team or just a one-sided team as well. And it's obviously subject to change, but as Ashwarya said, we're looking not just to teach you guys, but also make it fun and engaging. So not just the destination, but the journey, making it fun as well. I know it sounds cringe, but yeah, the journey does matter. And we're looking to really improve.
And of course, it's all subject to change. If we want to change the way this project works, that will happen later down the line. But for now, please do get a picture of the QR code or even log into the MS forms. If you have a friend with you, put their names in, and we want to empower you to lead the projects on your own. So we're not going to be micromanaging you. This is not a lecture. We're not professors. So we want this to be as fun as possible for you. So please get a picture of the QR code right now and fill this in ASAP.
Oh yeah, just to add, one of the competitions that we did, so we talked about the Halo project, we actually won £2,000 for that. So, there is good money involved in projects like this. So,
And I think the best part of starting off with holistic teams is that if you want to do an advanced project in the future and possibly sign up for a hackathon, you don't need to do the job of trying to find team members and making it a holistic team. You already have people you've been learning the course through, and that's going to make it easy for not only you, but for us as well as a committee. Cool. Again, we are a very community-driven society. We want what you want. We want what you enjoy learning and doing, and we will try to change the course of our committee and progression with the society as a whole based on what you want. So once again, please get the QR code for the onboarding project workshop, for the group formation for that. And the second link up there is to submit a project idea. Now, do not worry if you guys are feeling a bit scared about, oh, I'm not really as advanced in Neurotech as some other people. Who am I to submit an idea? This is about submitting interest. If you have a wacky idea, it doesn't have to make sense at all. This is what we're here for. We will sift through it, and please just submit any ideas, any interests that you have. It is pretty intense of a form. It has a lot of blank spaces to fill in about your description, about what you're interested in, about your expertise, whatever. You do not have to fill up all of them to the level that you think we might expect from you. It's just, hey, I'm interested in mind reading, who knows, right? And if a lot of people are interested in that, we will make a project to support that. And deadline for that at the moment is 17th of October. So please get a picture of this slide. I think it's very important, not just for you, but for us to also draft the project so we can run them out as soon as we can. Cool. Finished?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, okay, I'm just going to quickly wrap up because we have about 5 minutes. So, future events. We have the rest of this introduction to Neurotech. This was Neurotech 101. I hope you've enjoyed, but we have Neurotech 102 and 103 coming up. So 102 is going to be all about the actual neuroscience of it. I'm going to be consulting my resident neuroscience expert to see what I don't know. I don't know a lot of things. Trust me, there's a lot of things that are very new to me still, but we'll cover over what some open questions in neuroscience are, and then what we do actually know, and hopefully everyone will come to some sort of ground understanding of that. And then the second one, Neurotech 103, is going to be about the job market. So what's currently there, what jobs are available, what's going to be there in the future, and then how you can start applying for stuff now. Unsurprisingly, the answer is networking, but there are plenty of things that you can stay updated with through newsletters, and I don't know if people know what Substack is, but that's a popular means of providing information about the current world landscape that we will talk about there. And then next week, we have a talk from a Dr. I'm going to say Hairi Janan. That's happening on the 17th of October, so when the deadline is, so next Thursday. And she is a professor in the bioengineering department, and she's going to be talking about rhythm orchestrated therapies, which is hopefully going to be fascinating. So these are our QR codes. This one here is the ICR Neurotech website. So we have information. I actually didn't talk about the journal club. I'll quickly talk about the journal club. So the journal club, we're going to have a submission. The submission form is on the website already. You can submit papers that you're interested in, and it will come to us. We'll filter through them. We'll make sure that the community gets to pick what paper we read. And then we will organize times when people can discuss that paper and see what future applications will be. Apollo is going to help organize that. We also have the projects form. If you want to do the advanced projects, that is on the website as well. That's the form that you submit there. Our YouTube is currently in hibernation. It will get very active once we start submitting, for example, this event. That currently has our video interview. Then the onboarding project and the submit project I already mentioned. All right, well, that is everything for us today. Thank you so much for everyone coming. Hopefully everyone comes and asks questions. If you have any, come to the union with us and ask more questions. But it's a pleasure to see you all. Thanks so much.